just so everyone knows, this is Derek Strout, who is our GIS specialist on staff at Rails to Trails Conservancy, who I like to affectionately call the map guy. The way that I decided to invite Derek to talk with us is I had, what was it, like 3 weeks ago? Maybe a little longer than that, but I had an idea for a map to kind of help me with my work. And I gave you like the most basic instructions for what I think was like a huge task. And you sent me everything that I asked for plus more back within 30 minutes. And you're like, really, that's it? I thought it would be like a 4-month project or something, but it kind of reminded me, it kind of reminded me of the time that I asked my father if he would teach me how to drive a car like manual. And he was like, oh yeah, let's go to this hotel we can find. And, you know, so there's that.
I'm glad I remind you of your father. That's nice.
Yeah. Well, so Derek, if you want to start, introduce yourself, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Like Jorge said, I'm the GIS specialist here at RTC. I manage our mapping platform, our spatial geodatabases. I'm responsible for creating and designing new trail link maps for our website and the mobile apps. Make sure that all those maps are accurate and up to date. We've got over 5,000 now, so that's just a never-ending process, as you can imagine. And then I work with my wonderful colleagues like yourself and other folks in policy and trail development, membership, other communications department, just to see where location information and technology can help inform their work and hopefully bring some value. So I'm glad to hear that I brought a little value to your day.
More than a little. It kind of
That's great.
Blew my mind what was possible with the type of maps that you're able to source out for us. And what you were just saying about kind of working across departments, I was watching Brandy do a presentation. She's our VP of Communications, I think it was last week, and she kind of broke down the Rails to Trails mission. And I actually wrote it down really quick because she bulleted, and she was like advocating for trails, planning and developing trails, partnering for trails, promoting trails, protecting trails. I was like, oh, well, conversations with Derek, like his work kind of covers all of that. So yeah, you kind of work as like a spine and fulfill a need that we have, obviously, especially with TrailLink and our guidebooks. So I think that the best way to kind of explain to everyone kind of what you're doing was through our mapping initiatives, specifically the guidebook and TrailLink. And not everyone is aware of this, but like staff members actually go out in the field and map trails. A lot of our members don't know that. And there's been these trips where we would go and ride the trails. And in the past, we would have these, GPS units, and recently it's been phones. I remember hearing about these trips, and sometimes they were like, oh, it was the best trail ever. We were on the Katy and it was awesome. And then sometimes there are stories like, well, I got really lost. It actually wasn't a trail. It was a pile of boulders. And now it's not, it needs to be updated. So that's kind of the vehicle that we'll be talking about some of your work. I know you created a slideshow, so I thought we could just jump right into that.
Yeah, let's do it. I've got some stories along the way too, but those types you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just run through some history here and some slides. Go for it.
Yeah, and while you're pulling that up, I just want to mention, if anyone has any questions in real time that's on the call, you can just type them in and we'll address them as we go. So feel free to shoot some questions on over. And okay, I got your screen here. I can follow along too.
Great. Yeah, so just here's a little image if you've never seen our guidebooks before. Beautiful image from one of our colleagues when we were heading out to do our Pennsylvania guidebook. So this is sort of the final product, and we'll just talk about sort of some of the ways we go and gather that information. So just run down what we're gonna take a look at. Why do we collect our own data? What's the purpose behind that? The history that we have with the Garmin GPS units that we use for many years. Our recent transition to Esri's ArcGIS mobile applications. Some of the organizational value that that collecting and verifying that information can bring, and then just sort of what are we thinking about doing next.
Yep.
So, you know, you might be wondering, why do we even collect our own data? It must be out there. There are sort of online mapping platforms that have mapped the Earth, and that's true, but it's not always available, especially with brand new trails that just got built, extensions, and especially trail projects and abandoned corridors. There's things that that don't typically make it into mapping data, whether it's a national provider or even a local municipality. So there's often a need to just go get it ourselves and verify it. So it also allows us to go see the country's best trails. Like Jorge said, we do send groups out, and I think that's something I didn't expect was going to be a perk of the job. And we went on a trip, I think my first week back in 2016, and it was eye-opening. It was one of the most amazing trips I've ever taken. So that was really great to just show me the power of what we're doing. It allows staff to sort of get a greater depth of the information that we're trying to collect. So these, you know, it's not just the mapping data, it's writing descriptions and figuring out where amenities are. And like Jorge said, sometimes there are trails that we may have wanted to send folks to that don't exist or aren't worth your time. And so it allows us to make sure that we're capturing that as well. And then
with guidebooks, that's always been important, because it's kind of like quality control. Like we're going to print it and it's going to live in print. We want to make sure it's a trail that people are going to find useful.
For sure.
Yeah.
And just lastly, you know, it allows the readers, the users, to focus on the great outdoors and their experience and who they're with and whoever they're, you know, taking a bike ride with, and sort of smell the flowers, see the wildlife, and not be constantly looking at your map or your screen trying to figure out where you're going. So we try to provide all that information to just help you have a wonderful on the trail experience.
Before you jump, the first you mentioned the rail bank corridors. Are we one of the few groups that is keeping maps, living maps like that around?
Yes, we do have even early warning system, and we do keep up on the Surface Transportation Board abandonment process. That's not necessarily in my wheelhouse, but we do, I would think, have about the most comprehensive database of abandonments and corridors in that process. One of, if not the most comprehensive. So yeah, the Surface Transportation Board does collect that information and provides it, but we also take a proactive approach on that as well.
Great.
So Jorge mentioned the sort of old school mapping that we used to do back in 2006 when we started our mapping initiative. We had maps in our guidebooks previously, but we made the decision to really invest in that initiative and try to build our trail database. And so we purchased a bunch of these Garmin GPS map units, which many of you may have seen or even used. And they've been wonderful. You know, they've lasted us 15 years. They're highly accurate, as you can imagine a GPS would be. And they don't require cell reception. So sometimes, you know, you're on trips that you're kind of off the grid. So it's nice to not be worrying about having cell reception to collect your information. So this was sort of the original technology that we were going out using to map our trails. It does come with challenges though. So like I said, aging fleet, that little battery compartment you see over there tends to come loose, and over time, if the batteries pop out and you haven't saved your track, you are going to lose it. So issues like that, you know, the tricky menu navigation, the multi-tap, it's not super user intuitive. So it takes a little longer to train and get used to that. And you know, if you're on the trail, you're stopping and spending a lot of time using your device. Those units didn't have cameras, which would have been nice. All data stored locally, which again could be a plus or minus if you happen to drop your device in the river or leave it somewhere.
Caught in a rainstorm.
Caught in a rainstorm or what have you. All your data is just gonna live right there. So And the waypoints, as we'll see in a moment, they're just easier to handwrite, unfortunately. So we sort of moved along. Some technology has improved as part of our web GIS sort of platform that we're built on. We have the ability to use an application called Arcgis Collector. And so, like Jorge said, we're using our phones now. There's a tablet version available as well. Much more intuitive interface, accurate GPS. You only have one device. You don't have a second, handheld device that you're bringing. I can easily include RTC data before folks leave the office, and so we can provide them with information that they can see while they're out on the field. And you don't have to worry about AA batteries dying or anything like that. Just quickly, there are challenges, of course, with every technology. Not everybody does have a smartphone. So typically we'll have teams of 4 or 5, and 1 or 2 people will be designated as the mappers. Self-service is preferred. It makes your life easier, but of course we can easily make offline maps available. If you think you might be, like I said, going off the grid, we can make sure that you can still collect that information locally and then upload it when you do have service.
This is what I used on my mapping trip for Pennsylvania. We mapped in PA. And I think the best part about this is that it was constantly feeding you the information, like as we did the updates and as we kind of checked things off and added descriptions, it like appeared on your desk in DC right away, right?
Yeah, that is one of the largest benefits to that transition, is that I no longer had to wait for folks to come back to the office and give me a micro SD chip that I could plug into my computer. I could just start quality controlling and verifying information, as you're collecting it before you're even off the trail. So that whole workflow is much more streamlined now.
Because before they would bring back the GPS and pieces of paper, right?
Yes, we'll take a look at those in a second, actually. Yeah, got to laugh now, but at the time, when you're trying to crank out one of these guidebooks and you've got hundreds of trails, it was a little slower process. Yes, so like you said, there's definitely workflow improvements. Here, what you're seeing is all of the mapping teams that went out when we went out for PA and New York and New Jersey. So you can view the existing trails that we have. So you're aware of what you might not need to collect, and you can focus on what's new. Right, so this, to your point, there's this constant collect, submit process. And so you never have to worry about losing data. And I think that's just makes it easier when you're on the trail. It also makes my life easier as well. So I can see everything in a sort of staggered pattern rather than all at once on my desk Monday morning and have to crank through it. Waypoints are, it can be used as you see on the right here. So rather than dropping a point with the GPS unit and saying, point 004 is a porta potty, you can just click the restroom button and it'll drop it on the map, and that'll be much easier down the road. And I don't have to decipher things like this, because I would get dozens of these after every trip. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate the effort that everyone put in, and this was the process.
I love the coffee stain. The coffee mug stain is amazing.
Oh yeah. Who knows what that is? Just trying to decipher what's going on. We had this process in place. It worked great, but hey, times they are a changing. So, and then just quick start guides for staff, virtual trainings. We just make sure everybody's aware of what's going on, what's expected of them, and so they can have a good experience. 24/7 customer service. If you need to call me because the app is giving you trouble or what have you, we provide that as well. And then here's just another look at sort of a dashboard that I could put together pretty easily that shows, where all the teams are, the sort of data we're collecting. And this just helps me sort of, if someone does call and say, hey, do we need to collect this trail? Is this right? I can just go see where they're at and we can talk through it. So that's really nice to have. And so all of this field collection and user feedback that we get, whether it's an email or a phone call from a member, it improves our trail and corridor databases, not only for guidebooks and trail link, but also, our abandonment characteristics, keeping up with all of the process with the, like I said, the Surface Transportation Board. There's many steps that I am not an expert in, so it's good to get that information. Connectivity studies are, something we've really been focusing on lately. This is just a GIF from our Bikeable tool running in Cleveland to show, communities that would be connected if we were to build out the trail network. And that data that we're collecting in the field is feeding that tool in that process. Policy outreach, we can see which trails and parks are existing in certain congressional districts or what have you at any local level. And then something also we've been focusing a lot on lately is trail equity, and making sure that, part of our mission is to make sure that everyone is close to a trail or a park. And so that data also allows us to look at things like the social vulnerability index that the CDC puts out and things like that. So this dashboard here is just trying to identify communities that don't have trails. And so where can we make more of an effort to work with communities and hopefully bring some parks and trails to those areas.
And this is living, these are like living documents. I mean, as things change, as we get more data, as we build upon what we have, this is all subject to change.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, so our database is always living. We use the authoritative national statistics and data sets that are, routinely put out by, like I said, CDC and other large and small organizations, other nonprofits as well. So looking into the future a little bit, the Collector app has been great. There is a new-ish app called Field Maps that we'll be transitioning to. Very similar sort of tool. All the capabilities of Collector are included. There's just a few new tools, and I think it'll just help us streamline those team assignments that we looked at before. I think capturing audio and video from the trail, as well as the map information, that's always been sort of part of what we've done as we try to provide our readers with an experience, what they can expect to see if they go to the trail. But I think storytelling is such a powerful medium, and I think trying to integrate audio and video with this mapping data collection will be really exciting. And I think also, perhaps exploring corridors with drones as well. Speaking of storytelling, so as I'm putting this together, I was reminded of my trip to Wisconsin. So this is right after I joined RTC in 2016. Like I said, I signed up for a guidebook trip, which is something we've done for years and years apparently. And I said, yeah, let's do it. I didn't know this guy, Kevin, and we had another team member, Ken, that we were with. Long story short, we're driving down the highway and there's a geologic marker sign. And of course, Derek yells out, stop, we got to go back. And so we ended up here, and, the exact center of the northern half of the Western Hemisphere. So this is only to show you that no matter what little small town you're in, no matter what trail you're on, there's always some sort of story. And the Wisconsin trip, the New Hampshire trip I took, I'm sure you've got tons of stories. It doesn't matter where you are. Every trail has its own history. And so this is just one funny example that I think, I never, ever would have probably been to this point on the earth if it weren't for that mapping trip. So
I like how you're not telling your New Hampshire story.
Oh, well, I just have some scar tissue from all the poison ivy I'm thinking of right now.
That one didn't make it into the guidebook, I'm assuming, that trail.
I don't think that one made it into the guidebook. No, my bike snapped in half about 30 feet down the track, and I'm not a pro like you, so I didn't know how to put it back together. So I'm just looking around and there's poison ivy, and I'm thinking, why did we even try to map this trail? And my partner's 2 miles down the road. So yeah, that was a fun trip, but I don't think that one made it in the guidebook.
Gotcha.
I think using drones, I think could be exciting as a new perspective, bringing some context. These are such linear parks and trails, often rail trails specifically. Here's a picture that one of our old colleagues, Milo, took.
Oh yeah.
You can see the DNL trail. I don't know if you were with him on this trip specifically, but I just think it's seeing the world from that angle, I think always excites me. And this image is from that same Wisconsin trip. We were mapping the Tomorrow River State Trail, and it came to an abrupt end right at I think it's the Little Wolf River right outside Manawa, Wisconsin. And we thought, oh, how great would this be if the trail just kept going? It's an extra half a mile or something like that, and it would bring you right into town. And so we walked out onto this bridge that's not part of the trail, obviously, yet. And it was covered over. And I thought, man, if we just had a drone or something just to capture some video that would see, where you might be headed, I think that could be really exciting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of a short look into the future. But that's all I got.
When you were talking about like integrating video and kind of like audio, would that be something that you think you'd integrate into TrailLink?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it could be. I think that site is always improving. I think that would really add a lot of value. It'd be exciting. Members, staff, anyone. Like I said, I think telling the story around these trails is so powerful. Community members, maybe folks that have always wanted a trail and now there is one, just hearing the power of their voices. So yeah, that could be a part of TrailLink for sure.
Well, I'm looking at our time. I just want to give everyone a chance if they have a question to type one in, but I'm going to give everyone a moment to type in a question. And while doing that, I'm going to ask you one more. I know that, we had talked about how the guidebooks are kind of like, they're these print materials, you have them in your hand, they're printed as, we're working on them right until the minute that they go to print. Whereas TrailLink's this living document that you can pull up on your phone, you can pull up on your computer. Can you talk a little bit about the process of how TrailLink gets updated? I thought this was kind of really interesting. Kind of like I'll give you an example. The local trail by me in the Wissahickon Park, that trail, they closed the bridges about 6 weeks ago, and they're going to be closed for a year because of maintenance. Apparently after 50 years, you need to replace the bridge, the wood rots. So if I was to email TrailLink support right now and say, hey, I was looking at the map, those bridges are closed right now. Can you kind of walk people through that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, the email would go to an inbox that is maintained by one of our other colleagues, Donald, and he would parse that out to myself and the rest of the TrailLink team, and we would take whatever information you were giving us. We would do our own research. If there were updates that needed to be made to the map, I would be making those. If there were updates to the trail description, like you said, we would want to make a note that certain parts of the trail are going to be closed for a indeterminate amount of time. Then our colleague Yvonne would take that on, and we typically respond as quick as possible. I mean, those are always coming in, and so we try to make those updates, continually. So there wouldn't be a 2-3 week waiting time to see that reflected. I try to get on these right when they come in. So that's kind of the process. You get an email and do some research and do the job.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing, lightning quick, that it just kind of goes through our tree like that so quickly. And how many updates do you think you would average we get a week or day?
Oh, that's a good question. I could say a couple dozen in any given week, I would say. Yeah, we've got 5,000 trails on the website now, so you can imagine. We get emails. There's a parking lot missing, or there's a whole trail missing, or detours, reroutes, like you said. There's trail closures, so all sorts. Yep. Some of the jobs, some of the edits don't take very long. Other ones take a little bit of time. So.
And with the pandemic pushing up trail usage the past year, have you seen kind of that traffic grow?
Yeah, for sure. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I think it's reflective of the stats you hear across the country, just in usership of trails and parks. Everybody is trying to, get fresh air and get outside and experience those places. And, I think that's reflected in the traffic on the website as well. As people are getting out, they want to learn more about hopefully the trails and parks in their own communities. So yeah, I mean, we're just proud and more than happy to be able to provide a service like that and a resource that folks can go to and see photos and get reviews and read descriptions and
Sure.
maps as well, but it's all a big package.
Hey, Derek, I had someone type in a question here. I'm going to read it off to you if you don't mind taking a stab at it. Can you talk about how GIS is supporting the development of the Great American?
Sure. I work with that team, and we're trying to keep up with the feasibility study that I think is just coming out right around the corner. I think the second anniversary, beginning of May. So they're working on that. So there's going to be maps that are included in there that shows where the trail is going through each state. And of course, there's a bunch of gaps. So I think the trail is just over 50% complete. And so, yeah, one of our other colleagues who has a lot of GIS experience, he's doing a lot of work on that. But, you know, working with communities, calling trail managers, just trying to record the, you know, the details of each one of those segments. You can imagine a 3,700-mile trail. There's a lot of detail there. So we want to make sure that we're capturing it all.
Yeah, cool. Well, I want to thank you for your time. I think we're at the 30-minute mark. And thanks for everyone else who tuned into this, listen to this discussion. And you won't hear me say this very often, but I hope the Red Sox have a good season.
Thank you, Jorge. We're off to a better start than we were last year. So
okay,
to your Phillies as well. You know, it's the National League, so that's okay.
Well, I'm just saying it once. So
I appreciate
everyone have a good remainder of the week, and thank you and have a good day.
Yeah, thank you, Jorge. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.